synchronicity. I believe in energy and the law of manifestation. I believe that the shortest distance between 2 points is a creative distance. The last 3 days since Diane di Prima has arrived in Louisville have been magic. On behalf of Think a Review, I welcome each and every one of you to our first International Poetry Series reading with our guest, Diane di Prima. Friday, May the 8th at 8 p.m. in the same auditorium, Lucian Strike will read. On October 1st or 8th, Allen Ginsberg will be here. And we are finalizing arrangements with Lawrence Ferlinghetti to visit next spring. Think a Review thanks Sharon Gibson for flying here from Baltimore and taping an exciting interview with Diane di Prima, which will appear in our fall issue side by side with an interview with Allen Ginsberg, which we're presently coordinating. I'm also proud to announce that we have just worked out the details to publish in paperback Sharon Gibson's biographical thesis on Diane di Prima, transformed and addended with new sections and unpublished poems and photographs from each period of Diane's life. This will be the first biography on a poet whose time has come to be recognized as one of our major American poets. In the last few days, I've heard several people say, who are those people at Think a Review? And where are they getting the money to do all this stuff? Yeah. Well, we're not dealing drugs. Those days are over. Our overhead is low. We operate on energy. We're doing this for the experience, for the love of it. There are no salaries. We know it will evolve. Plus, we have 10 to 20 fundraising projects going on right now. Enough of that. We ordered as many of Diane's books as we could get, and we have a few remaining copies on our table in the lobby. There will be an autograph session and a reception in room 300, the faculty lounge on the 3rd floor, immediately following Diane's reading. Our rare books and special collections department, which is in the basement of the Ekstrom library, holds one of the largest collections in the world of Diane di Prima material, which I was not aware of until the day after I had made my first phone call to Diane di Prima. And here to introduce Diane is one of the people most familiar with Diane's work, the curator of our rare books and special collection, Dalinda Bowie.
Now, having met Diane di Prima, it is so funny to think of her work encased in these little gray manuscript boxes. It's sort of bursting out now. Diane di Prima, woman, beat poet, the only woman beat poet, editor, feminist, mother, mentor, artist, publisher, translator, teacher, playwright. Since her first work appeared in 1959, she has published probably 30 books, a dozen plays, edited 3 literary magazines. Diane di Prima has lived and continues to live what most of us only talk about. Robert Creeley wrote, "Her search for human center is among the most moving I have witnessed, and she took her friends with her, though often it would have been simpler indeed to have gone alone. Tonight, she is here to take us." Diane di Prima.
Hi, everybody. I gave some thought to how I wanted to read tonight, and I thought that it might make some sense to start with earlier work and move into later work and kind of give you a sense of how things grew for me rather than randomly read this and that. So that's what I'm going to do. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all these books. So, I'm 50, I'll be 58 this year, and I began writing when I was about 14, and in a serious way I decided I was going to be a writer at that point, whatever that meant. I knew it meant that you had to write every day, so I started doing that. By the time I was 18, I shouldn't say this in the hallowed halls of a university, but I often do. By the time I was 18, I had gotten rid of the idea of a college education because it was getting in the way of getting the writing done. The only time I wasn't able to write a lot was while I was at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania for a year and a half. So by the time I was 18, I was living in New York, and this is all by way of background to the early work, which was written then, 53 to early, maybe 1960, in New York City. Fascinated by and trying to really get the sound of the way we spoke on the streets, what was going on like that. This was before there was invented this thing they call the beats. It was earlier than that. And so it was easy because there were no labels and there was no particular stereotyping or point of view. So I just wrote, and I was interested in how much I could leave out and still say the whole thing. I was going to hear a lot of jazz, Miles Davis at the Cafe Bohème, Charlie Parker at a place called the Open Door on West Broadway, and other things that are like ancient history now. And during that time, I was interested in kind of a short line. How much could I take out and still say the whole thing? What could I hint at and let people just get the rest? And I wrote a whole bunch of poems that way and a whole bunch of stories that way. And I'll read to you from some of the poems now. I'll stop talking. These were from a series called More or Less Love Poems that were written between 53 and 56. In case you put me down, I put you down already, doll. I know the games you play. In case you put me down, I got it figured, how there are better mouths than yours, more swinging bodies, wilder scenes than this. In case you put me down, it won't help much. I hope you go through hell tonight, beloved. I hope you choke to death on lumps of stars, and by your bed a window with frost and moon on frost, and you want to scream and can't because your woman is, I hope, right there, asleep. Baby, I hope you never shut your eyes, so two of us can pick up on this dawn. You bet your life, next bedtime, I'll get even. I'll call your name wrong, and you'll think it happened accidental. Just a couple more, because there are many of them, some in this book and some not. Long gone that light behind you, gone that light that made the edges of your shoulders live and kept your face a secret. You are not quite the air I breathe. Thank God. So go. So that was like being 19 in New York, and 20, 21. And there were a lot of stories that I was writing then that were kind of like that too. They were very short and very to the point. And then there were also, there was one long story I wrote that was more flowing or moving kind of prose, and I want to read a little section of that. That story was called What I Ate Where, and it got published in a book called Dinners and Nightmares. See? Got published in a book called Dinners and Nightmares in 1960 or 61. Do we need to do anything? No? Can you guys hear up on top? Can you hear when unknown sounds come from behind stage too? Okay. So this part of this piece, What I Ate Where, goes like this. I remember the winter, the January, I ate nothing but Oreos. If you know what Oreos are, they're those chocolate cookies, 2 of them at a time, stuck with sugar in the middle and very addictive. I mean, I really got hooked on them. There was this low armchair in my pad, and I would sit in it and eat Oreos and read, and sometimes drink a little milk or water, because Oreos in large numbers, they tend to stick in your teeth. When I wanted company, I would go upstairs and visit these 2 girls who were my neighbors. They were a little crazy. They liked Oreos too, but not as much as I did. I mean, not 3 or 4 packages a day. But anyway, they would sit there and eat them with me to keep me company, and they washed theirs down with ale. Ale and Oreos, I didn't dig too much together like that. But boy, to hear the wind blow and all that awful January rain and a bunch of windows looking out on old, crumbling, filthy brick walls, and to sit in the middle of all this and eat Oreos and reading was, well, anyway, it was a way to get through January. To get through January in Manhattan is hard. To get through January and February the same year, almost impossible. One of the best ways to get through, I found, was this of eating Oreos. Except that it makes you fat. Really fat. Even if you don't eat anything else, and you think, shit, how can I get fat? I haven't had breakfast or lunch or anything like that. But don't kid yourself. Oreos make you fat. Or maybe it's just me. The girls upstairs ate a lot of them, but I couldn't tell if they were getting fatter or skinnier because they never got out of bed. That was a weird pad. The bed was in the center of the center room, and they were in the center of the bed. The edges of the bed were for ashtrays and beer cans and beer can openers and pastels and Oreos. And they had these red lights that they turned on all the time with that gray outside. It was too much. And dust over everything like you read about in biographies of Proust and try to imagine, but you hardly ever encounter it. Real, genuine dust from not moving, from not capering about. Not the kind of dust you raise, the kind that drifts slowly, settles in through a whole gray winter. We would sit and eat Oreos and drink ale if there was any, and sometimes one of them would draw in a black book with pastels. And every time it rained, we would talk about the fallout. And one day the girl who never drew said she would draw too. It was snowing. And she got out the other one's watercolors. And while the other one drank ale, and I did terrible abstract pastels, she carefully, like a child, drew an apple and a pear, each 2 inches above a wobbly, perspective-y table. And carefully, like a child, she filled them all in with color. The pear yellow, the apple orangey red, and the table brown. And it was very beautiful. And she said, there, that's my still life. What else is there to paint? And we said, landscapes. And so she drew a tree with a bird in it, and a very tall flower stem, and the flower on the top of the stem was also the sun. And it was like Blake or Ray Don, but much more childlike and lovely. And she said, there, that's finished. What else is there to paint? And we said, people. And she drew and painted all in one color, a gray blue, a very all wrong, lumpy, disproportionate person who was not beautiful at all. And then she said, there, I have finished. I have mastered the art of painting. And we said to her, no, you haven't, because your people aren't right yet. She said, that is how they are. And if they are not right, I will be known as a painter of landscapes and still lifes. And then I went out and brought back from the snow pastrami sandwiches and ale, and yes, more Oreos. And we waited for it to get dark. So that's some stuff. Sometimes I do readings where actually I've been known to do readings where I do by decade. Like I have 50s stuff, 60s stuff, 70s stuff, 80s stuff. By now it would take too long. But it used to be when it only went up to 80s stuff that I would like have a break in the middle and change costume. And I always had the imagination that maybe I would change costume for each decade, but I never got that involved with the performance end of it. That's some of the early stuff. There was a lot of early stuff. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about early in the 60s, like actually 1959, my line started to open up and change, and I got very interested in image and letting whatever wanted to come into the poem come into it, whether I understood why or not, whether I understood what that thing was that was coming in or not. And so it seemed like that stuff before where he's honing down was like preparatory work or kind of learning how to do that, but then after a while it became more interesting to let everything in. And my line got very long. And around that time in my life, my world was changing too, of course, because those things are not ever separate. So two of the changes that I can think of off the top of my head that go with a longer line and opening up the poem, or did for me, were actually being in love with someone instead of having affairs for the first time, and being given 6 very large green peyote buttons by my next door neighbor one night. Those are two of the things I can remember. You know. I don't know whether it's legitimate to talk about either of those kinds of things anymore, but nevertheless, they're part of the biography. Anyway, biography is not very interesting, but I want to fill out the poems with some background, because these are very different. I'm going to just read a couple of poems from the early 60s. There was a book then called The New Handbook of Heaven, which was really a book of love poems, but it was, as you'll hear, kind of different from more or less love poems that I was reading before. Here's one of them called The Beach. Where I ship out from, the tides give no indication, washing dead flowers under the rocks at my back, the houses flat and implacable, painted green, it peels, the walls are damp. The chill at the railroad station in the mornings, always the dawn light and wind, our collars turned up. The suitcases broken, a gesture, almost empty. Ourselves, the pitiful gray of no baths, no sleep, the gray we rub off the sheets in the green houses. Did we lock the door? The sea is gold in the dawn light, the rocks silhouetted against it. How many years will you amble along the shore, hands in your pockets, whistling the same old tune, living on soft-shelled crabs, the sea floor hard under your clean, bare feet? Just as I caught the train, I think I saw you, shuffling to the horizon to stamp it flat. That was before the picnic basket fell open, and my choice, my monster lobster, walked back home. Here's a short one. This is a little more has the flavor of the earlier stuff. Here's a short love poem from that period called Numbers Racket. When you take no for an answer, will you look any different? Will you get pale behind your glasses? Will you go backward with that funny step? Will you straighten your jacket? I mean, are you taking it now? Taking no for an answer? So then became a time for what time of finally, born in New York City, grew up in New York City, lived there till I was about 30, I guess, 31. And at the time of first leaving the city, so that some of the poems in the next period, like mid-60s, had a lot to do with finding my way into nature, whatever that is, and finding my way into nature with the same human concerns I had or didn't have before. There's a poem for my husband at that time, Alan Marlowe, called First Snow, Kerhonkson. Kerhonkson's a little tiny town about 110 miles north of New York City in the Rondout Valley, just before you get to the Catskills. I lived there for a while. First Snow, Kerhonkson. This then is the gift the world has given me, you have given me. Softly the snow, cupped in hollows, lying on the surface of the pond, matching my long white candles which stand at the window, which will burn at dusk while the snow fills up our valley. This hollow, no friend will wander down, no one arriving brown from Mexico, from the sun fields of California, bearing pot. They are scattered now, dead or silent, or blasted to madness by the howling brightness of our once common vision. And this gift of yours, white silence, filling the contours of my life. Another poem from Taos I wanted to read because we were talking about it today. I was talking about it with Andrew. To the same husband, wonder of wonders, 2 poems to the same husband. Written about 2 or 3 years later. We were in New Mexico, trying to figure out how to live there. He said, "You can see 10,000 years in this landscape." I said, "Yeah, isn't it wonderful?" He said, "No, I hate it." And she made that the poem. That was what it was like there. Poem in praise of my husband, Taos. I suppose it hasn't been easy living with me either, with my peaks and ups and downs, my need for privacy, Leo pride, and weeping in bed when you're trying to sleep, and you interrupting me in the middle of 1,000 poems. Did I call the insurance people? The time you stopped a poem in the middle of our drive over the Nebraska hills and into Colorado, Odetta singing, the whole world singing in me, the triumph of our revolution in the air, me about to get that down, and you saying something about the carburetor so that it all went away. But we cling to each other as if each thought the other was the raft and he adrift alone, as in this mud house not big enough, the walls dusting down around us of fine dust rain, counteracting the good high air and stuffing our nostrils. We hang our pictures of the several worlds, New York collage and San Francisco posters, set out our Japanese dishes, Chinese knives, hammer small Indian marriage cloths into the adobe. We stumble through silence into each other's gut, blundering through from one wrong place to the next, like kids who snuck out to play on a boat at night, and the boat slipped from its moorings, and they look at the stars, about which they know nothing, to find out where they are going. So time went on, as it does, and in the late 60s, I found myself engaging in various ways with the social changes that were rumbling around me. I was in New York for part of that time, and my friend, a poet named Sam Abrams, got the bright idea to rent a flatbed truck and put some kind of electric on it for people who needed electric, and we went out, folk singers and poets and actors and whatever he could summon up, and did guerrilla theater through all the neighborhoods we could. Lower East Side, Spanish Harlem, whatever like that. And I found that the poems I had, even the poems I had where I really cared about that kind of stuff. Like I have a poem that I wrote when they killed somebody you probably never heard of called Lumumba. And even the stuff I wrote like that, it was too poetical. It was too intellectual. It wasn't made for reading on the streets. So I started doing a whole body of work, which I still work on from time to time, called Revolutionary Letters, which are poems that I wrote specifically as street theater, and to get people thinking, to stir things up a bit. And I did it in New York, and then I moved out to San Francisco, partly to work with the Diggers, who were doing a lot of, they understood guerrilla theater and a lot of that stuff. This is all ancient history. And continued to write revolutionary letters, continued to read them in the streets, and so on and so forth. I want to read a poem that was the introduction to that whole series that I wrote that year, 68, to my grandfather, who had been an anarchist from southern Italy, who had given me my first lessons in the world, what it was about. He talked to me about politics, and he read me Dante, and we would listen to operas together, which were forbidden because they might give him heart attacks. That's how seriously he took them. And he would get so emotional that he was not allowed to hear them, so we would sneak to listen to operas and drink espresso, which neither he nor I were allowed to have. And so he taught me about the world, and as this stuff started to be in the air, I started to also think about him. This poem is like how can I say, it's like a prelude to the revolutionary letters. It's called April Fool Birthday Poem for Grandpa. Today is your birthday, and I have tried writing these things before. But now, in the gathering madness, I want to thank you for telling me what to expect, for pulling no punches back there in that scrubbed Bronx parlor. Thank you for honestly weeping in time to innumerable, heartbreaking Italian operas, for pulling my hair when I pulled the leaves off the trees, so I'd know how it feels. We are involved in it now, revolution, up to our knees, and the tide is rising. I embrace strangers on the street, filled with their love and mine. The love you told us had to come or we die. Told them all in that Bronx park, me listening in spring Bronx dusk, breathing stars, so glorious to me, your white hair, your height, your fierce blue eyes, rare among Italians. I stood a ways off, looking up at you, my grandpa, people listened to. I stand a ways off, listening as I pour out soup. Young men with light in their faces at my table, talking love, talking revolution, which is love, spelled backwards. How you would love us all, would thunder your anarchist wisdom at us, would thunder Dante and Giordano Bruno, orderly men, bent to your ends. Well, I want you to know, we do it for you and your ilk, for Carlo Tresca, for Sacco and Vanzetti, without knowing it or thinking about it, as we do it for Aubrey Beardsley, Oscar Wilde, all streetlights shall be purple. Do it for Trotsky and Shelley and big dumb Kropotkin, Eisenstein's strike people, Jean Cocteau's ennui. We do it for the stars over the Bronx, that they may look on earth and not be ashamed. Stayed in print at City Lights for 20 years. I would add to each new edition the new poems that had come up for some reason or other. And then a couple of years ago, they decided they weren't relevant anymore. So now they're not in print, except I think I might put them out on my computer or something like that. So I don't want to get into them too too long and too much, but just read a couple short ones. There's short ones and long ones, and maybe I'll read one. This is a couple of the simpler, shorter. And you know, most the earlier ones are written in the 60s, but as I say, there's some. In fact, I'll read you one that I just wrote a couple years ago called Rant. 60s. Revolutionary letter number 21. Can you own land? Can you own house? Own rights to others' labor, stocks or factories, or money loaned at interest? What about the yield of same? Crops, autos, airplanes, dropping bombs. Can you own real estate so others pay you rent? To whom does the water belong? To whom will the air belong as it gets rarer? The American Indians say that a man can own no more than he can carry away on his horse. And this one was 60s very much. It was kind of like an answer to people kind of falling in love with a romantic, narcissistic self-image, which trapped a lot of people when we could have been being more active, people were sort of hung up on how great it all was to look like that or to be like that, you know, how hip we all were. Of course, I wasn't a kid in the 60s, so it made it different. I mean, I could see some of that, and it wasn't anybody's fault. They were just naturally their age. This is Revolutionary letter number 29. Beware of those who say we are the beautiful losers, who stand in their long hair and wait to be punished, who weep on beaches for our isolation. We are not alone. We have brothers in all the hills. We have sisters in the jungles and in the Ozarks. We even have brothers on the frozen tundra. They sit by their fires. They sing. They gather arms. They multiply. They will reclaim the earth. Nowhere we can go, but they are waiting for us. No exile where we will not hear, welcome home. Good morning, brother. Let me work with you. Good morning, sister. Let me fight by your side. And one more early one, number 36. Who is the we? Who is the they in this thing? Did we or they kill the Indians? Not me. My people brought here cheap labor to exploit a continent for them. Did we or they exploit it? Do you admit complicity? Say, we have to get out of Vietnam. You could say, we have to get out of Iraq. We really should stop poisoning the water, etc. Look closer. Look again. Secede. Declare your independence. Don't accept a share of the guilt they want to lay on us. Man is innocent and beautiful, and born to perfect bliss they envy. Heavy deeds make heavy hearts, and to them life is suffering. Stand clear. I guess I will read one later one of these. Don't know which one I want to read most. I think I'll read this one that I wrote while I was sitting waiting my turn in '78 to read at a fundraising thing for sending medical supplies down to Nicaragua. And it was at one of the Unitarian churches, and the one in San Francisco. And so I was going to read old stuff, but I had a pen and paper. And this is what happened the day I had been seeing. I don't know, maybe some of you remember, because that was recent. When the battles were going on around Matagalpa, there were a lot of pictures in the newspaper of kids, that people that were fighting down there were around 14 on the average. So I wrote about that. It's called Matagalpa, 1978. These eyes of children, closer than fingernails set in my hand. These maimed villages closer than my heart, beating, pressing against my lungs. A form of love, all touch is, and what does not touch something? At least the air, the ground. These eyes of triumphant children, the blood bursts through as the gentle villages are strafed, the blood, bone, muscle, burning. But the forests are full, the deserts on the move, the jungles whisper resist. The eyeballs of children burst with blood and love, and the cities of America, the center of the killer tornado, the cities, yes, the cities of America fill with resistance. The dream of old men and women stranded on her sidewalks, seeking food, seeking freedom, finding only insult. Even these cities are full of triumphant resistance, and the dream of the old is echoed in the young. All artists are warriors, says my son, and he, age 8, is sure. The eyes of the children, Managua, New York, Matagalpa, Houston, Soweto, Manila, Tehran, Bogota, Oakland, eyes and hands, knives and guns of the children, Peru, Zimbabwe, Mexico, eyes and hands, knives and guns of the children. These eyes of children, windows on our hope, that all resistance is triumphant resistance. All love is revolution, and all touch a form of love. The moment of revolt is the moment of victory. Thank you. Those are some of those revolutionary letters from up to the 70s. I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about and read a little bit. Are you guys up for just going straight on? It's not too murderously hot for you all? Okay, good. You can take off lots of clothes. Yeah. I wanted to talk about and read from a poem that I've been writing since '71, called Loba, the She-Wolf. I had to borrow it from the guys' library. I forgot to bring my copy with me. So Delinda lent it to me. Isn't that nice? This is the first 7 or 8 years of Loba. It's gone on a long time since then, but I haven't republished it with the additional material. I want to read from the book and maybe read some later sections. Loba loosely means the she-wolf, and the book ranges between animal, myth, human, semi-human, whatever, all kinds of figures. But I think it's really a poem about the spirit, and maybe about specifically, mostly, the journey of woman's spirit in the world. So it ranges through all kinds of things. I'm not gonna try to make sense of it for you. It makes its own sense as a whole book, but I'm just gonna read some things that I picked out because I thought maybe I felt like reading them tonight. And see how it goes. This is another one of those things. When it began, I had no idea what was going on. All of a sudden, I was in a classroom with another poet, and we were teaching in an agricultural community in California, and I started hearing these lines in my head, and I had to sort of drop back and let my fellow poet take over the class while I scribbled them down, and this kept happening for days. Those kinds of things will happen, and then after a while, I realized that we're all connected, and it just spun out from there. So this is from the early part. Read you how it begins. This is the lines in my head. If he did not come apart in her hands, fell like flint on her ribs. There was no middle way. The rocks screamed in the flowing water, stars dizzy with pain. If he was not daisies in her soup, he was another nettle in her hair. She stumbled crazy over the stony path between slanderous trees. Even field mice knew she called the shots. Dimensions of the obsidian cross he hung on, singing in the sun. Her eyes, cloudy with nightmare, she grinned, baring her wolf's teeth. It's not exactly what you expect to have coming through when you're in a classroom of high school juniors in the artichoke community. Okay, what next? There's another part soon after that that answers that. If you do not come apart like bread in her hands, she falls like steel on your heart. The flesh knows better than the spirit what the soul has eyes for. Has she sunk root in your watering place? Does she look with her wolf's eyes out of your head? Things that I had picked. How he drew her down to pleasure. She left the flickering ice for the candlelight to watch him bending his head with the weight of invisible antlers. It was a role she was tired of playing. In her mind's eye, she saw herself loping across Europe, naked and lean on the beaches, presiding at gypsy festivals. She glimmered black and white like some elusive opal. Who would brush donkey shit off her skirt, lick the beach tar off her feet by the flickering gray seas of the north? In the candlelight, she moved her hands, her rings played. She moved her face, her mouth. Her voice fell like water on him. This is another take. It is still news to her that passion could steer her wrong. Though she went down 1,000 times, strung out, across railroad tracks, off bridges, under cars, or stiff, glass bottles still in hand, hair soft on greasy pillows. Still, it is news. She cannot follow love. His burning footsteps in blue crystal snow, and still come out all right. Tracy here? Okay, I was going to read this one for you. There's a long poem here that's a birth poem, which I'm not going to read because it's too long, and it's followed by a very short poem called "The Loba Sings to Her Cub." It's like an immediate moment after birth song. Oh, my mole, sudden and perfect, golden gopher tunneling to light, oh, separated strands of our breath, bright silver threads of spirit, oh, quicksilver spurt of fist, scansion of unfocused eyeball, grace of your cry or song, my cry, or you lie warm, wet on the soggy pelt of my hollowed belly, my bones curve up to embrace you. Song of the Loba, which we were talking about recently. I thought I would read. I set out, the poem had gone along, and I usually just follow wherever poems tell me to go. I don't try to make plans ahead. You know, I never was good at outlines. So, but at one point, one day, I thought, I think right here I want to put a love song. Now, when you make an order like that from the great unknown, you never know what's going to arrive. And when I was done, I realized it had nothing values, where I tried to ground it more in humanness too, but I don't know how good I got at how human it got. So I'm going to read you those two parts. It's called The Love Song of the Loba. Oh, my Lord, blue beast on the pale green snows, see, I have been running to keep up with you. I have been running to find you. My tongue scours ice your tracks made. I drink hollows of your steps. I thought many a dark beast was you, only to find perfume of your fur, bright cloud of your breath, not there. They are flesh and clay, heavy dross. They do not fly in the wind. See, I have flown to you. Do you lurk in night? Do you sail to sea on an ice floe, howling sacred songs? Oh, my Lord, my good, dark beast, how is it I cannot taste you, wraith and shadow, triple-headed blind god of my spirit? You burn blue flame on the green ice, long shadows lick at your eyes, your fur like Arctic night, the fire of your song. I will circle the earth, I will circle the wheeling stars, keening, my blue gems shoot signals to your heart. I am your loved one, lost from eternity. I am your Shakti, wheeling through black space. I, the white wolf, Loba, call to you, blue mate, O lost lord of the failing hills. The Loba continues to sing. I will make you flesh again. Have you slipped away? Think you to elude, become past, and black and white as photographs? Oh, I will lure you into being till you stand, flesh solid against my own. I will spread my hair over your feet. My tongue shall give you shape. I will make you flesh and carry you away. Oh, bright, black Lord you are, and I, your sister, and magic carpet. Will you ride? Oh, I tumbled here for you. I put on flesh, drew down this skull over my flaming light, slipped on this shaggy pelt to make it easy for your spirit to speak to mine. As in that bright, unclouded ocean where the stars are not yet born, where you and I slid tumbling like dolphins, we could not speak each other's names. Oh, you leaped into the worlds, and I followed, did I not? Falling and shrieking, I solidified, merely to look, my Lord, once more, into your great, sad, beast eyes. Share this sorrow. So I guess I better stop reading from the Loba book because otherwise I won't get to newer things. Moving right along here. I'd like to read just a couple of newer Loba things. Just a couple. There's a whole lot. There's that plus a bit more new Loba to go in when I get the next edition of it out, which will probably be in a couple years. Right now, one of the things that's happening in Loba is kind of weaving in and out of imagery that comes from Psyche when she's running around trying to find Eros again after he splits because she put on a light. He said, don't put on the light. She said, I can't see in the dark. She put on the light. Next thing you know, it takes years to get back together. But that's part of what's going on, and another part of what's going on. But you wouldn't really know that, really, unless I told you, because I'm not writing the story of Psyche and Eros. But in her wanderings, for instance, this is a part of her wanderings. This is a recent poem from last year. And this is just Psyche wandering and alone, right? It's called The Loba Longs for Remembrance in the bardo? Shall we say that the streets were littered with half-eaten food, dry leaves, debris of plastic and paper? Shall we remember the half-mad horrors who walked on them, eyes black as Egypt, al-Kem, the women of that night? Shall we recall the quarter moons of that era, their desperation, the hopelessness of the wind that flew out of dead center to its target in our hearts? What shall we keep of the hard shells of our hands, the cloven claws held out to beg, held close to keep what ran like sand? Shall we be able to name the skeletons, ostrich and pachyderm? Who will remember the bleakness of this time? Who will recall it later? That's part of her wanderings, and then there's lots of other things. There's one other one I thought I'd read, which is one of the ones I had in my mind today when we were talking. It's called Eros Animus, and it's from the whole Psyche sequence. She sort of gets this glimpse of this being that might be the being she's looking for, but might not be. Black body glistening, he stands among vaulting tent ropes, arch of canvas, oil or grease. Black light shines off of him. He is naked, and yet somehow, somewhere, is wearing red. His black eyes lift or droop, almond or not. They pierce. He does not move. He is everywhere. He flies, trapeze or no, is trickster coyote, leaves through labyrinths with no center. He is non-existent black wolf, mon soul désir, his heart in or out of his body. And I'm going to do one thing here that I've never done before. Is there any water to be had? What is it? Wait. I've never read this poem before, and I don't know how it reads, but it's going to be in the next Thinker Review. And it's a long poem. It's a long poem. They're very brave to take it. I'm very brave to read it. I don't know when I wrote it. I suddenly found it among the papers on my desk on a pad I don't remember owning, but it was in my handwriting, so I wrote it. And it's called "The Mask is the Path of the Star," which is a saying from the Dogon of West Africa. It has a lot of levels of meaning, and there's a book called A Serious Mystery, S-I-R-I-U-S, that might clue you in on some of the meanings. But the mask is the path of the star. And I think what I was doing, since I don't remember writing it, I can't be sure, but I think what I was doing was trying to kind of see beginnings of humanness in the world from, when we were maybe still lemurs. Things like that, and then it moves to other times too. And it moves between this planet and other parts of the galaxy, or between galaxies, I'm not sure. 1. Stubs of horns, snout, huge eyes of lemurs, their language, geometry. These we remember, recollect. No one is depicted here. 2. When all the masks are the same mask, that face, a golden mean writ in Vajra space, before the birth of stars. 3. And stars are buoys, marking the paths of the sea, reflecting currents, or the currents follow star paths. The whole thing a W, double mask, double axe, joined at the forehead. Macroposopos, the double face of the world. silent, and she is goddess of the hinge. 5. And the masks finally differentiate. No longer one face. We begin to say, which myth are you living? We say, she belongs to the bear, the wolf, the toad, Hekat, secret of Africa. Toad, the squatting woman giving birth, Maria and Buddhist. Toad, primeval transformation done in the open, without cocoon or pupa, shepherd. And Africa shaped like a womb, like the bull's head, given in its blackness to the moon. 6. It gleams like the apes of Thoth, their eyes in the moonlight. Black ship of the world, whose language, geometry, speaks with eloquence of every nuance of the heart. 7. We say or said she belongs to the bear, the mouse, the turtle. Now, we are lucky if we can name the power. She belongs to light, to darkness. We have lost nuance, fine angular line. She belongs to the amethyst twilight of the dawn. 8. Ushas. I go toward the dawn, cried Inanna, plunging into the night sea, Ereshkigal's house. But that was a different land. 9. Here, we have lost nuance. The subtle crumbles like a house of cards with all the trumps removed. 10. But the mask is the path of the star, the Dogons say, and it is true. Lines of the mask we follow, no one is depicted. Track on the air, path of the psyche, as our flesh follows the paths of the sea. 11. And it is not nature as such, not sea of earth or sky the spirit seeks, but the jeweled city dreaming, remembrance, recollection, when those eyes, huge almond eyes above the pointed snout, emerged and gazed the worlds. 12. Concatenation of architectures prefigured as crystal is. The city, which is the ramparts, where all of space is but one park, enclosure, common land, we graze in. I know, she said, I now know there is an arcane Jerusalem, Jerusalem Arcanum, which is the business, and the word business brings us round again to sea currents, maritime buoys, marking the unmeasured paths of the sea. 13. Arcane Jerusalem, Jerusalem Arcanum, the only business of the third part. Or did she say third half? Of the third half of life. From the sea to the mask, to the city in the sky. Day star, we ride toward dawn. 15. Snout and soft, rounded horns, light of the mind poured through lens of that eye. We read as hologram, eternal city. got up at 7:30 in the morning one day in September and knew I had to write a poem, which is not my way of life normally. It's not that I don't get up early, but I don't usually get up like that, wanting to write a poem. And I had heard Sonny Rollins the night before, and the phrase that stayed in my head, that had come in my mind then, which was, "The stars shine for us." People like that is what the stars shine about. And that morning, I suddenly knew I wanted to write a poem with that title. So I wrote this poem, and I couldn't understand as I was writing it, because it was a lot about the process of dying. And 10:30 that morning, Miles Davis died in Santa Monica. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was sick. I didn't know any of that till later. But it's become kind of a poem that, I don't know, has a lot of meaning for me because of all that. The stars shine for us. It was there that my heart faltered. There that it let you in. There that I screamed. It was triumph and death cry at once. Here on the brink of time as we once conceived it. Screamed, shouted in joy and a rough approximation of triumph. There is joy in this steady brightness, backlighting the new dark. Here, my hand was steady. There, it faltered, but my voice rang true. Here, hand and voice betrayed me, but I held out of time to the clearness, claritas, unobstructed, they tell me, though I have yet to experience. Here, the tissue of lies, betrayals, turned to gold, leaving this edge, lead, brass, so you could see the process, where it came from, if not where or how it goes. This chipped corner, missing bead is the entrance. These three notes on the hurdy-gurdy define the elegance. There is pride in the going and heart-bursting joy. The saints go marching out. What will you do? I want to ask, but I don't. When the last of them vaporizes in the heat of passion, how will you measure? Will you measure the dark? I think I want to end on this poem, Rant, which is probably the last revolutionary letter. There's got to stop sometime. Maybe it's the last revolutionary letter. Who knows? Rant. You cannot write a single line without a cosmology, a cosmogony laid out before all eyes. There is no part of yourself you can separate out saying, this is memory, this is sensation. This is the work I care about, this is how I make a living. It is whole, it is a whole, it always was whole, you do not make it so. There is nothing to integrate. You are a presence. You are an appendage of the work. The work stems from, hangs from, the heaven you create. Every man, every woman carries a firmament inside, and the stars in it are not the stars in the sky. Without imagination, there is no memory. Without imagination, there is no sensation. Without imagination, there is no will, desire. History is a living weapon in your hand, and you have imagined it. It is thus that you find out for yourself. History is the dream of what can be. It is the relation between things in a continuum of imagination. What you find out for yourself is what you select. Out of an infinite sea of possibility, no one can inhabit your world, yet it is not lonely. The ground of imagination is fearlessness. Discourse is the videotape of a movie, of a shadow play. But the puppets are in your hand. your counters in a multidimensional chess, which is divination and strategy. The war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. The ultimate famine is the starvation of the imagination. It is death, to be sure, but the undead seek to inhabit someone else's world. The ultimate claustrophobia is the syllogism. The ultimate claustrophobia is it all adds up. Nothing adds up. And nothing stands in for anything else. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. The only war that matters is the war against the imagination. All other wars are subsumed in it. There is no way out of the spiritual battle. There is no way you can avoid taking sides. There is no way you can not have a poetics. No matter what you do, plumber, baker, teacher, you do it in the consciousness of making or not making your world. You have a poetics. You step into the world like a suit of ready-made clothes, or you etch in light. Your firmament spills into the shape of your room, the shape of the poem, of your body, of your loves. A woman's life, a man's life, is an allegory. Dig it. There's no way out of the spiritual battle. The war is the war against the imagination. You can't sign up as a conscientious objector. The war of the worlds hangs here, right now, in the balance. It is a war for this world, to keep it a veil of soul-making. The taste in all our mouths is the taste of our power, and it is bitter as death. Bring yourself home to yourself. Enter the garden. The guy at the gate with the flaming sword is yourself. The war is the war for the human imagination, and no one can fight it but you, and no one can fight it for you. The imagination is not only holy, it is precise. It is not only fierce, it is practical. Men die every day for the lack of it. It is vast and elegant. Intellectus means light of the mind. It is not discourse. It is not even language. The inner sun. The palace is constellated around the sun. The fire is central. But if there are questions, that's fine. And if there are questions that don't want to be asked in this situation, there'll be the reception. So, okay. Anything?
We do have wine upstairs on the third floor. We'd like
I never actually introduced them to a bar trumpet, I must confess. But Paul, one evening, watched on